A story can change a life, but what if a story walks you right back into itself? Prague, 2015. Rain glossed the cobblestones outside Café Dobry Den, the smell of roasted beans drifting through the narrow doorway like an invitation, and seated by the frosted window, clutching a battered notebook, was a man who once imagined this very scene long before it ever happened. His name was Marek, a novelist whose debut book, The Window Seat, had quietly bloomed into a cult favorite. He had written much of it right here, in this tiny cafe tucked off a quieter stretch of Old Town. Yet almost no one knew that fact. The setting was unnamed in his novel, described only as a cafe with a single squeaky window hinge and a bell that waits half a second before ringing. He thought the place invisible. Until today. The journalist, Petra, arrived with a gust of wind and a stack of printed notes. She had asked to meet him for his first ever major interview, and without knowing why, she had chosen this spot. Marek, she asked, shaking rain from her scarf. He smiled, gesturing to the empty chair. But something flickered behind his eyes when he saw where she sat, directly in the seat he described, the one where his protagonist waited for forgiveness. As they began, Petra commented casually, "Funny thing, this cafe feels like somewhere I've read before." Marek's heartbeat stumbled. The doorbell gave its delayed chime. The hinge squeaked. A barista hummed the same off-key tune Marek had immortalized in Chapter 7. Petra frowned at the coincidence, glancing around. The air thickened, not ominous but uncanny, like reality had stepped inside its own shadow. She turned a page. "In your book, you describe a moment where your character is interviewed at a cafe." She laughed, almost like this. The rain slowed. The world leaned in. Marek finally spoke, voice low. "I wrote it here." The cafe seemed to pause, cups mid-clink, breaths mid-sip. Petra blinked, stunned. "You mean this exact place?" He nodded. In her eyes, questions blossomed faster than she could ask them. Suddenly, the interview wasn't just about an author. It was about the invisible thread between imagination and existence. How stories sometimes circle back, catching their creators in the places they once dreamed. They talked for hours, deeper than planned, about art, coincidence, and whether fiction sometimes chooses its own truth. When they finally rose to leave, Petra placed a hand on the squeaky hinge, listening to it whine. "This cafe was waiting," she whispered. Marek stepped outside, notebook pressed to his heart, and thought, a writer imagines worlds, but sometimes those worlds find their way back. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to help the channel grow.